Over the past several days, 3 females have been found dead.
Looks like someone's going after these girls.
Then they have to know to watch their backs.
Streaming now.
You really want what happened if this woman happened to you?
Exactly why I need to keep going on this.
Starring Emmy Award winner Amanda Seyfried.
I'm worried about what you're gonna find. So am I.
Long Bright River, a limited series. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
But that was something that was interesting about when I met Christian, because he really just needed someone to sing harmony with him sometimes, and I was there, and he was just like, "Can you sing? Let's try." And the more I did it, the more I was like, it made me feel like I was unwinding some web of anxiety in me. I was feeling by letting down this fear, I can't do this. This is I was opening up to something more honest.
That's Grouplove's Hannah Hooper, reflecting on her early days collaborating with bandmate and partner Christian Zacconi before Grouplove was even a glimmer in their eyes. They were living in New York, trying to make it as artists, and ran out of money, so they went to an artist commune in Greece where they could live almost for free. And that's where they met the other members of Grouplove. They've been making excellent albums together ever since, including the latest, an album called Healer that just came out. And Hannah had an intense year leading up to Healer, including having brain surgery. You'll hear her talk a bit about that, as well as suffering the death of a close friend, but also a creative triumph. She had her first ever solo exhibition as a painter. So we talk about all of those things and more in episode 42 of the LSQ podcast. I'm your host, Jenny LSQ. Thanks so much for pressing play. So tell me about what your creative space here in LA is like. What does the space look like where you paint and where you go to access that mode?
Well, it's changed a lot since I had a kid. I just had my first solo exhibition sort of closing out 2019.
Nice.
And yeah, it was amazing. It was at Subliminal Projects in Echo Park, which is Shepard Fairey's space. Sick. It was very I felt a lot of pressure on it just because I felt like I had a lot to share and show, and I hadn't painted in a long time, and sort of lied my way into saying that I was ready for the exhibition. But I rented.
You gotta sometimes.
You gotta. You're ready, but you just have no work.
Yeah.
That's what happened. So, I rented a space in Echo Park that I convinced the label that was going to be a band rehearsal spot. So I got them to cover most of it, and then it just became my.
Because you knew you needed a room to go to that wasn't where you could get distracted by doing
anything.
Family stuff.
Literally,
yeah.
I'm so easily distracted. So my daughter is my everything, but she's also very loud and very time consuming.
Yeah.
So I just had to sort of as a job, I just have breakfast with her, and then she'd go to school and I would go to the studio.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you think that the work you showed at the exhibit was different as a result of having been compiled quickly instead of if you had been able to do the more protracted version?
Well, it was weird because once I'd kind of caught up technically to where I used to be, which took actually a couple months, then I had a friend pass away, and I just used it as this space of healing, and I really went in there and just painted. It was a weird communication with him. It's it sounds very, when I try to explain it to people, it sounds strange, but I felt like I was trying to understand where he went, and I started painting these super, I would lose myself in the work and step back and be like, oh my gosh, there's another, maybe there's another dimension or this energy field. And so it became this cathartic thing for me. And then I was like, okay, now I'm actually building a show.
Wow.
This isn't an illustration or something. This is like me healing, me going through all this, and it was really a beautiful process.
And that was the first time you'd used painting in that way?
Yeah, I think it, like, I mean, I can't say it was the first time, but it was the first time that I needed it in that way.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, I'm curious, like, did your physical practice of painting change? Yeah, you talk about having a period of time where you just had to, I'm assuming you mean recovering the physical aptitude to paint after you had your surgery, right?
Yeah, well, no, that was like, so the day that I was getting, this is kind of crazy, like while I was painting the show, I felt like a weird thing happened to the left side of my body. Like I would describe it as a slow stroke, but I had no sense if I was like, it was stress induced or it was just like, I mean, I was also painting these massive scale paintings that were on the floor and I was leaning over them in this strange position. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm inducing this pain. Maybe this is, I started staying later and later as the show. So I'd have these 18-hour days, super physical and lost in this, this world. And then I was like feeling something happening. And it wasn't really until I started like my peripheral on my left side, I was like, there's really something weird happening. So I called my doctor and he's like, you should get an MRI. And the day I was getting interviewed for the painting show, like the cameras were set up and we were in the middle, I get a phone call and they just kept calling and they were like, and I could see it was the doctor's office and they're like, you have a thing in your brain that's bleeding and you need to get it taken out. It's pressing on a nerve that eventually will cause a stroke. And I was just like, okay. And Christian was there helping with like,
oh my God.
And actually our drummer Ben was there and we were just, everyone knew that something had just happened, and I just like kind of tried to snap out of it. I don't remember anything I said that day.
Oh my God, totally.
And I was just like, oh shit, like this is real.
Yeah.
It was very
real-esque.
Very real. Yeah.
Yeah,
and so
you went immediately as soon as possible to.
I like 3 days after the show or 4 days after the show opened, I got brain surgery, which is crazy.
Fuck.
So we'd already recorded a lot of the song, like everything was sort of happening once. I don't know why I jumped right into my art show, but I felt like that was my time to process things alone that had happened with a friend of mine who passed, and then
yeah, man, that's a 1-2 punch for real.
Yeah,
but but subsequent to having the surgery, I mean, was there an intense recovery period from that? I'm guessing your brain surgery. It sounds like
it was
the most
very
intense.
Similar to pregnancy, where everyone's like, oh. When you're pregnant, everyone tells you like, oh, in this month you're going to feel hungry and you might feel nauseous. And then you like have the baby and no one is there. You know what I mean? And it was the same thing where everyone's like, okay, brain surgery, like you'll be under so you won't notice. But then after the brain surgery, I was like, dude, my head is enormous. Like the right side of my head was like 6 inches out from swelling, and I couldn't stay awake, which was pretty. So I spent 2 weeks away from Christian and Willa and just recovered up in my parents' house. And it was just weird. I was like, I felt really brave. And that was something that I was just trying to like stay in that place.
Yeah.
But it was weird and scary and just like.
And where did the writing of these songs for the new Grouplove album happen in this timeline? So
they kind of happen at different stages, but the majority of the album was written in Texas and El Paso, and that happened before. That was happening when I started feeling weird things. It was like we were recording and I was doing the art show, like at the same time.
Yeah.
So there was definitely like an energy when I was writing of like that I've never felt before, of just an awareness of time, like that time isn't. We don't live forever, that I'd never really experienced before, and I've felt that more as a mother, and I felt that more.
With your friend passing away,
with my friend passing away, and then with our
and
president, and like just all of it. I just felt this like intensity and this anxiety, and then we were in El Paso, where there was like children being held at the border, separated from their family. There was just a lot.
Right. You guys got, now I'm remembering too, you guys were down there at Sonic Ranch, and as listeners who've heard us talk about Sonic Ranch on the program before know, it's just a beautiful place. It's just an oasis. Mm-hmm. And people love recording there, and there's pecan trees everywhere. Any other time than exactly at the very moment that this just tragedy at the border was, the attention was, shifting to it. It wasn't just when it began by any means, but I remember just thinking, holy shit, they're down there 1 mile from the border right now. That must be fucking intense.
Yeah, you could hear things. I don't know. I was, and we. The most frustrating thing is there's nothing we could do. We weren't even allowed to get closer than we were. There was nothing we could do. Like I, in a way, just like wanted to bring comfort through music to these kids or just anything, because I knew we couldn't like reach out and touch them or help them or free them or anything, but it was just a dark time in general. So we had this like, we just had a lot of things like feeding the album. It was very easy to write this album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I guess thinking about where Grouplove began and the energy that people associate at least with like the early beginnings of Grouplove, that like I guess this would have to be the darkest
I know,
album
that's
era or
what's
something.
so, and what's crazy
But
is
it's
that
it doesn't feel like, I mean, I guess like I feel like the previous album felt a little darker sonically or texturally or something.
funny. I remember talking to you about the previous album. I was just talking to Christian about it, and I was just like, I don't know, it was a mess. Like we came back from tour and like we didn't have a place to live, and like it just seemed like that was
your definition of a mess at the time.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just interesting how growing up, I don't know, there was so much that we like learned about ourselves. Like really, me going through such a crazy health issue, and just it kind of opened up this place for the whole band to feel safe, to be like, I'm going through this, and I feel this, and I have anxiety, and like everyone just felt so close during the making of these albums, because we were genuinely like scared. And there's something in fear where you can either just like isolate, or and when you're making music, you can't really, I mean, you have to lean on your bandmates, to make a song. So there was just this like transparency that was really nice. And then from that, there was like humor. I think there's something when you feel safe, you're like, oh, let me like play in this space and like have fun here.
Right.
And I like found that I just really, I mean, I definitely like to avoid what's going on. I learned that, like by delving into art, and then the art helps me like heal, which is a word I keep using, but it's funny. I'm like, I keep using this word, but there it is.
But obviously looking back to the beginning of Grouplove, like that was, I guess I didn't even realize until I was reading the bio for this album. I guess I never associated that getting together in Crete with being like, well, what else are we going to do? We may as well go to Crete. Like, you're so young, just whatever. Yeah. Like Christian had just had one band or something before that or whatever. But but that's how you guys felt. Arriving there, you felt like, am I perceiving that correctly?
Totally. We were sort of like,
it felt like a low period when you
left
for that trip.
No one believed in us in New York. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things, like we were living in New York, we were working all these jobs to sort of like pay for our studio, or like make this show for Christian, like make the show possibility so we could play it. And it just felt like we were really like scrapping by, and there was no one that was like, you should be doing what you're doing. We believe in you.
Right.
The city was sort of like tearing us down. And then we found each other, and we were like, wow, like I see something great in you. You see, like we felt this balance. And then for some reason, Greece came into the picture, and we were like, let's just get out of here. Like we can't afford it anyway. Like, and that's a huge thing that artists deal with, is like, how do we pay for a space to make art? And so then that, being in Avdu, that was where we found a free space to make art. It was like an amazing place to be and meet, the whole band. And it's pretty wild and like serendipitous thing that happened. And I did feel on this other level, like that happened to us again in Texas. Like we were just sort of like left everything and went to Texas to write this album with Dave Sidik, who is a wild man.
Yeah, well, speaking of humor, I'm sure he imparts just he's a very dry guy.
I mean, everyone was like, you guys are going to love or hate each other. And I was like, please love each other. Just because we're both so like honest and kind of out there, and we just were like, I mean, if there's no way to translate this expression, we called each other 6-inch friends, which sounds disgusting, but we were always 6 inches away from each other the whole time. Wow. So we were just like so funny, and just, he really like, I don't know, he saw something in us that he really wanted us to push us to, like, he kept saying like the next level, but I think he really just wanted us to take the time to make everything the best that it can, because we write things so quickly. Like I make art so quickly. We have this natural connection as a band, and then it's like Dave was there to be like, and now what? Like we have this amazing melody, we have this great song, like what do you guys, let's take a little more time with it.
Right.
And it was awesome to have that, someone believing in you and also pushing us.
But did there end up being one kind of recurring idea that you guys kept coming back to that was the way in which you took it to the next level, or do you know what I'm saying?
No, I do. I'm like, marijuana? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Totally. No, I think there wasn't one way. I think I noticed like thematically that for the first time, and this is not the question you asked, but that Christian always spoke about sort of like this tense thing happening around him, that anxiety and this like actual physical things happening around him. And I always was like, how to escape it? You know, he was like, let's talk about this. And I was like, and this is how to avoid talking about this. You know what I mean? It was an interesting push and pull that we...
Well, it's coping. It's styles of coping, I guess.
Totally.
Maybe.
Yeah. And exactly.
Subtitle for the album.
Yeah.
Healer, parentheses, styles of coping.
Coping, exactly.
S-O-C.
Yeah, totally.
I wanna pause and go back in time. Gonna go back in time.
Do it.
So you were in New York to pursue visual art.
Yeah.
And where had you come from? What made you go to New York thinking I'm gonna paint here?
Well, I'm from San Francisco, and I think I always wanted to go to New York. I just felt like there's like an association to New York artists and this like very old school like group of artists who were in the Hamptons, like Jackson Pollock, and
right.
I just always, there's a romanticism to New York, which when I got there in the early 2000s, I felt like I had almost missed it. You know, I felt like the Strokes were there or something on like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. But as for visual artists, there was a huge graffiti thing happening. And I went to Parsons, which is a very cool school, but very commercially oriented. So,
right.
And I like definitely am not a commercial artist, but it taught me a bunch of cool stuff. And anyway, I got in with a bunch of graffiti artists when I was there. I started finding that there was like, I don't know, this adrenaline with doing it. And I was kind of a lookout girl. I was like, but I just found something really exciting about it. And then I got arrested and I was like, this is not something I'm like drawn to anymore. But I found that same adrenaline in music, which is just, I don't know. Christian brought that out in me, but,
so wait, tell me more, if you don't mind, about the circumstances surrounding a graffiti arrest.
Yeah. I was so dumb. You know what Sweet and Vicious is?
Yes.
So I was 20 and I was like coming out of the bar there and I caught like a tag on a Vandal Squad van. Like I didn't even know it was a van. I just wrote my tag on it and someone came out of the van and was like, excuse me, ma'am, show me your ID. I had a fake ID. Like it was the layers of things that happened.
Wow. So wait, you had a fake ID because you were 20 and you literally graffitied on the Vandal Squad's van.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
I mean, the whole thing.
What was your tag?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
I can't.
It's too embarrassing.
I feel like I'd get in a lot of trouble though,
okay.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But look at you now.
Look at
Fuck
me now.
that Vandal Squad.
I was just thinking of Willow when she's older listening to this, and she's like, what? You wrote graffiti? I'm going to write graffiti.
I feel like it's a don't ask, don't tell policy if your kids do graffiti. You know what I mean? It's just a don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
And when had you started feeling first inklings just of that kind of creativity as a kid? What were your earliest kind of creative pursuits?
God, that's a good question. I drew all the time. I always felt just like a little bit on the outside of social stuff. And I found that drawing made me really observant and made me able to like sit with kids and not feel so anxious. So I would draw people and I got attention for it, which I, enjoyed. And I also like kind of savored these memories because I took time to like draw them. So really in high school was when I started using it as a form of like developing, like believing in myself. I guess I use it as a way of, developing that.
Right, because you got positive reinforcement for doing it.
Yeah, and I also got like privacy in public, which is weird. Because that's why before we did this interview, I was like, are you someone who you consider really social? Because I always wonder, people who put themselves out there, I find that a lot of us aren't actually very social people, which and it's confusing because when people want to talk to you, you're like, I'm actually like,
I'm a little freaked out.
I'm kind of thinking right now. I'm like in my own weird private space.
Well, that's why I like to DJ at a party, because this way I don't have to talk.
I was DJing, but drawing.
And had you ever had any musical inklings during, as a kid?
I mean, I did some like super backup musical roles, and my parents claim I did a lot of performances at home with my older brother, which I don't totally remember, but I was like a different person in my house. I was really outgoing in my house, and I'd go to school and feel like not as safe and something, I don't know. So, but that was something that was interesting about when I met Christian, because he really like just needed someone to sing harmony with him sometimes. And I was there and he was just like, can you sing? Like, let's try. And the more I did it, the more I was like, it made me feel like I was like unwinding some web of anxiety in me. Like I was feeling
Right.
like by letting down this fear, like I can't do this. This is like I was opening up to something more honest. And I think, I mean, I don't know if you know, but the early Grouplove stages, I wore a mask on stage.
Yeah,
And
okay, I remember that.
yeah,
now that
like
you say it.
yeah, it was very weird, like a Phantom of the Opera mask. It's because I was so nervous. Like I was genuinely so nervous. I was bright red, and it was before we had like fancy lights. I was just like our early shows. I sat on a stool, and I saw a YouTube video. It's not up anymore, thank God. Where it looks like I'm dry humping the stool. Like I was just so nervous. I was just rubbing back and forth. I mean, it was awful. And then I stood up after that, and then I had this mask, and then we were in Berlin, I think, and someone thought I was a burn victim, and I was just like, I should just stop wearing this mask because it just like it's holding me back in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does seem like you've grown to be an ever more confident performer, and obviously that's a huge part of like the dynamics of Grouplove Live. And do you still feel like, is there still a dread of it, or have you grown to kind of love it?
I've definitely grown to love it because I finally, and like a lot of it was just learning from Christian. Like he's just been, I mean, he's definitely my soulmate in so many ways, but a lot of it is just like, oh, like this world is our world up here. You know, like we can be super versions of us. Like it would be weird for me to be like headbanging, ordering coffee in the morning in LA, but I can be like, you know what I mean? I can be as passionate, as aggressive, as disgusting. Like I can
be a funny video bit.
But exactly, like that's like on stage you're just like, oh, it's like you can let it all out. And it's so cathartic, and it's like I actually need to get it out on stage now. Like we've been touring for a while, and we all just feel like we're like pent up, like
yeah. And I guess you see that that's what people respond to more the more you behave in ways that everyone else knows they can't in their normal lives. Everyone else is all pent up and
it's honest though. You know, that's the thing is like it's not put on. It's really is honest. And if I'm having a bad show, it's pretty obvious too, because you won't be seeing that. I'll be like fiddling with my ears and my pack and like walking to the side of the stage, and that's a reality too.
So when did it start to kind of, you know, how recently did you start to feel good about it, or what was there a breakthrough moment where?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's just like one of those annoying things. You know, people are like, just slowly day by day, like you stick with things and they become a habit or whatever it is. It was just something like that. There was no like aha moment. I just slowly let go. And it's so funny that it's like all that tension that we hold in us is actually what's holding us back. Like all the control is what's making us suffer. It's so annoying.
How has your songwriting practice kind of changed since you first started to even just tap into songwriting as a thing, presumably, you know, when you met Christian or whatever, but like, do you have a solitary songwriting practice as well? And what's that like?
I do. It's, I mean, I started with Christian just being sort of like harmonizing, and then I have memories of us like writing together, and I was so in my head, like, what I say has to be perfect and like it needs to come out and be poetry. And then, you know, the more we got comfortable with each other, the safer I felt to just show that I don't know how to write a song. And by not knowing how there was like an honesty in the writing that was really refreshing. And there's no right way to write a song, you know? And he really just like supported that. I mean, his patience, I've just heard so many stories where people who write together, there's one person that's really dominant, and like Christian really could have been like, I've been doing this my whole life, and like I'm an amazing songwriter and I've worked at this, and he was just like always like, that's awesome, keep doing it. And like, I mean, the real lesson is that it's like support the arts, because that's how people, you know,
and
grow.
Also it's another example of you know, setting the intention and then living up to it. If you call yourselves Grouplove, that you're gonna have to be egoless about it to an extent.
I mean, he's so egoless.
Me love.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I could be a little more me love. He's so egoless. Like, it's beautiful.
Do you see yourself at some point putting out music that's separate from Grouplove? Whether it's with other people or on your own. Just call it me love.
Me love. Yeah, I know. Like solo hate. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so like focused on this right now that I haven't really thought about that. But we all actually, everyone in the band writes their own music. And I think that's what makes us so much stronger when we come together.
Yeah.
And we actually are putting out for Record Store Day a song that I wrote by myself and then we recorded as a band. And it was, I don't know, it's just really nice to like bring it to the band with the confidence, like this is done, like what can we do now? And we've done that before. Like Christian, there's a song Places that Christian just wrote and Dave like added a little to it, but it's really a Christian song and that's on the album. But that's pretty rare. Like a lot of the times we write the songs together, you know.
And obviously you're going to be going on tour for a year basically, and there's an album about to come out, but are there now future kind of visual arts projects that you're kind of going to put on the back burner for later this year? What's your next? Like
what am I doing visually?
Yeah.
We're going to do, I mean, so as this world is getting more like technological and people are getting more and more removed from one another, I'm sort of taking the road like let's bring like printed things back and like things that I miss personally. Like I used to go to shows and get zines all the time, so I want to make zines with Dan actually our bass player takes a lot of photos on tour, and Ben has started taking photos, our drummer, and like Andrew was going to write some stuff and Christian and I were going to do some drawings and just make just a collective thing that just is like shows what we do on tour. So that was something I wanted to do as a group, because I think like us being visual together is also helpful and keeps us like a little unit. And then I'm doing right now like our stage design, and I just actually reached out to Christian Joy. Do you know that? Yeah. I figure
Christian Joy, famous Karen O
fashion
clothier.
Yeah, and also just like it's weird because everything I've ever pinned on the computer, anything over my lifetime, is basically all been Christian Joy.
Yeah.
Like, so talking to her on the phone about like ideas I have for what we're going to wear on tour was just such a dream come true. It was wild. And we just have like a very similar way of talking about things texturally and color-wise. So she just like understood me. And normally people are like, what are you trying to get across? Like I'll be like, it feels blue and silver, you know, and you have to be like much more like literal and specific. And she just got it. So that was amazing.
By the time this comes out, the album will either have just come out or
cool.
something like that. But I'll figure it out. But now that it was just this week that we're recording this, it was just announced like yesterday, the proper announcement of Healer. And I mean, are you just stoked now for it to be?
I mean, it's like this has been a long time coming, because there was some real healing that had to get done to be in a place so we could announce this, so we could tour.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean, this must be kind of the most fun, you know, picking up your vibe, the most fun section, sort of, because the anxiety part
it's all done.
Is sort of done, and there's
it's amazing.
So you get to just delve into creative mode and make stuff.
That's
what we're doing. What you want.
We're just you know, fighting the label to get more money and making stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I've got for you.
That's awesome.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Well, thanks again to Hannah for visiting me here in LA and for her time and candor. I hope we get to have more one-on-one convos like that in the future. And for now, the tour dates they were supposed to do this spring have been suspended, postponed as we all grapple with the coronavirus pandemic, but hopefully they'll get those rescheduled real soon. And I'm back with a new episode in another couple of weeks. Episode 43 features a conversation with Alex Ebert of bands including Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. Looking forward to sharing that one. And you can share feedback and reach me with questions on Twitter @JennyLSQ. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you next time.